This episode of Bonfireside Chat is brought to you by 1. Our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and join the fun. Kick us a couple bucks. 2. My book, Souls of Darkness. Go to Duckfeed.tv/Souls of Darkness to find out more. It is on Kickstarter. Any support you can provide is appreciated. And if you cannot provide any support, thank you for listening.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
Many monarchs have come and gone. One drowned in poison, another succumbed to flame. Still another slumbers in the realm of ice. Not one of them stood here as you do now. You, conqueror of adversities. Give us your answer.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
You're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a cursed favorite.
Yes, and this week we are continuing our discussion of Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, the HD remake / reshuffling of Dark Souls 2, continuing our kind of weirdly appropriate time warp.
Yeah, this fast forward version of season 2 or season 4 of Bonfireside. Season 3? Season 4 of Bonfireside. Season 6? Season 6.
Gary,
season 2.
Pick a number, go with it.
Season 1.
Gary,
it is season 4
okay.
of Bonfireside Chat. So yeah, and we're on season 5.
What's happening?
Yeah, no, I just stumbled.
Okay.
I forgot about Demon Souls.
Oh yeah,
like a lot of those caches out there.
Oh, that's Miyazaki's true genius.
Yeah, exactly. Miyazaki.
He didn't even touch this game.
Yeah, so the last time we went through the beginning up to Drangleic Castle, covered a lot of the changes, and we're going to hit Drangleic until the end game here, where I think a lot of the strongest changes are.
Yeah.
Get started here with Drangleic Castle.
Yeah, so you get here just like normal. You go through the crossroads in the shaded woods, and a couple of things have changed even in the run-up. You may have seen this back when you were doing the first approach to the shaded woods, but things make just a little bit more sense, right? The shades are still there. You have some more falcons, and most of all, the Flexel Sentry is no longer there.
Yeah, because he guards prisons.
Yes, he does not guard castles.
Yeah, he specifically guards prisons. And yes, he probably works for Vendrick, but he has enough guards to guard him. So instead there's a phantom there. So it's less of a mini boss. They kind of do some more mini boss stuff a little bit later in this and add some of that. The big kind of thing here is that they really added so there are more statues in the game, and if you don't have the King's Ring, they come to life.
Right.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, and like it definitely provides a little bit more evidence for kind of what feels like the most correct interpretation of this last leg of the game, from Drangleic on, which is Vendrick is trying to keep Nashandra out. He is making this retreat and like leaving everything behind him.
And that's what I really love about having these statues here at the King's Ring, because when you get to Drangleic, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you can still go up and talk to Nashandra. She's still there, but I love this idea of her being trapped in the throne room. Like she can't leave because these things will come to life. And then once you get the King's Ring, and could theoretically have gotten through here, like that does something. It allows her to get out and make her way down to the basement. Yeah. And eventually fight you.
Yeah. So yeah, these statues, they're placed in such a way most of the time that if you are playing this like it is the original vanilla version of Dark Souls 2, they can sneak up on you from plain sight as they come to life, and especially with kind of some of the more scarce lighting. Yeah, that makes it a little bit more difficult as well.
Yeah, and you can actually go, if something is going to come to life, you can attack it before it does.
Yes.
Which is really handy. So if you have the durability to spare, you can run around tapping statues, check them out. It's the King's Ring thing is interesting because I never actually experienced that. I just read about it because I never came back here after getting the King's Ring. You could if you want to, if you're going to do the because spoiler, I didn't do the Pilgrims of Dark Covenant for the second run through of the game.
I dipped into it. It's not different.
I read online. It didn't seem like it was different, so I didn't feel bad about it. But that would be a good reason to get through here with the King's Ring as a thing.
And so I'm kind of happy that this is mostly just the realm down here, right? Like even like the Undead Crypt, there's really no statue that you have to run by if you're making the run back to Vendrick to kill him after you get all the giant souls, right? So it's good that this was not more of a thing, because you would run into a bit of a safety bit problem.
Yeah, where you just have to change out your equipment, which is already what the King's Ring is.
Yeah.
You just have it more often.
Yeah, but I mean, just like more pervasive. Like, well, okay, here's a trade-off you need to make. You either give up a ring slot or you fight more enemies.
Yeah. And now you just have to, just the inconvenience of changing out your ring when you go through the door.
Yeah.
A lot of kind of dead ends here are no longer dead ends. That really conspicuous empty room to the left now has a Sublime Bone Dust in it.
Yep, and it's guarded by a Scion Knight, so his man cave now has some sweet moss growing on the side in the form of in the form of the remains of a saint. So cool.
Yeah, which makes tons of sense. I really like that the even the rooms with statues, even if there aren't more enemies, they're just more statues, and it's just more striking. Like when I first went into that room where you have to, there's the giant at the end, right after the first bonfire, and there are twice as many statues in the room. If I were a hyperbolic internet man, I'd be like, I totally shit my pants. I didn't shit my pants. I just thought oh no, I'm gonna have to fight all these guys.
I totally shit my pants. I should see a doctor. It's happening more often lately.
Yeah, I can't control myself when I see video game enemies. Yeah, so you don't have to fight them all. It's not actually harder.
No,
this level is interesting because it's just visually cooler, but not actually harder.
Right.
It just looks neater, and there's actually I guess it's actually easier. Probably most of the changes.
Yep. Why is there a Darkstalker down by Grandal?
Because he's a dark lord. He's a dark lurker.
I suppose.
Dark guy. I assume that's what it is. But
those
guys don't ever have anything to do with the dark.
Yeah, just like those guys. They only show up in the wharf, and aren't they implied to be transformed pyromancers?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I just assumed that it was there as a gotcha thing, as a gameplay thing more than a story thing. And it's one of the rare things they did entirely for gameplay.
Yeah.
Additive. So it just to surprise me when I went down there.
Yeah. The poison mask room. I remember we were kind of guessing at what the purpose of that was. Like, why is there just this bottleneck where masks are shooting poison at you? Now it is a very elaborate chest trap.
Yeah. Which makes more sense. You can almost see that as being an error when they first made it.
Yeah.
That could have just been the way it was meant to be, and somebody forgot to carry a 1 or something. I know how programming works.
Yeah. You carry the 1. Yeah. Well, I know how programming works. There's 2 kinds of people: those who carry the 1, those who carry the 0.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody didn't do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
The biggest change in the area, I think, is after Double D. You fight the double dragon riders, and you have to make that way around where you trick the giant into turning the screw that you go up to the King's Ring, and that little run is really different between there in ways that are not exclusively harder, just more interesting.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because just after you activate the elevator, that's really all you have to do. You can die and then just run and kind of skip this whole side of it. They make activating the elevator harder because there are no enemies that animate in that room. There are bunches of statues, but you have to lure some people in, which doesn't end up being too hard because, boom, there are some mannequins here now.
Yeah. There's some people on call from Earthen Peak.
Yeah, which wrecked my shit. I would never have thought that the mannequins would give me as much trouble as they did.
Mannequins I've always thought mannequins were hard, and that's they've done something. They've buffed them in some way, which made that's part of the reason why I thought Earthen Peak was a lot harder when we were there, and it remained hard even when I got here. So you get him to do that thing, and there are also desert sorceresses there, which I don't know why they're there either.
Yeah.
Again, it just feels like it's adding some variety. By far the coolest thing is instead of in that gigantic hallway, instead of it being covered by Elan Knights, because adding desert sorceress things, that's frustrating. But the Elan Knights felt, because that's so Earthen Peak is related to the Iron Keep.
Yeah.
And you get this sense that like that either came before or it was, or not that it came before, that was a kingdom that Vendrick had a relationship with, because of his salamander basement and the like. So having a lawn knights there felt somehow worse than just having a couple of mannequins here, because they're like the symbol of that. Instead, though, you get a really interesting mini boss, which is the executioner's chariot without the driver.
Yeah,
here, which is a huge surprise.
Yeah, like I didn't know what to make of that. Like, so what they're doing is replacing the two mastodon knights here, the primal knights, and you're pretty much left alone to fight this because there are some cyan knights up waiting in the wings if you go up there to go after those mimics. But I didn't know what to make of it at all. Like, this was one of the most surprising changes in the game for me, actually.
I thought it was surprising too. The only thing I got from it was this idea that like, out of all these kings, Vendrick is the only one that's still around. So he was victorious and in some way, shape, or form, like has dominion over some of these other enemies. So you get a little bit of a grab bag from the other areas. And I could see him staying away from Seldora because that's fucking Spider Town and overwrought.
It's like a different version of Aldia. Actually, like one of them is gathering them out of curiosity, and the other one is gathering them out of authority.
Yeah, authority and just like pulling out all the stops.
Yeah,
Nashandra cannot get through this.
Calling in some vassals. Yeah.
Yep.
Huh. Yeah. So, okay. So I forget what the purpose, the whole kind of undead arena there off of the Huntsman's Copse. I forget the name of it, but where the original
Purgatory.
Yeah, undead purgatory.
Undead Purgatory.
The purpose of that, I mean, that just feeds into the whole we're hunting undead in the copse, right?
Yeah, that was the old Iron King's torture undead, like torturing the undead chamber.
Yeah, just like perpetually until they turn into skeletons.
Yeah, and then torturing them further. Because he's the worst. But again, nobody knows his name. We have to go back in time to actually meet him. Like, he's super dead. They do add some Alon Knights here. But they also another mini boss, which was another big surprise.
Yeah, the bell gargoyle up on the parapet.
Yeah. He's got a bell gargoyle. He's pulling out all the stops for the castle. Like he's gathered, a representative from most areas, most of the spokes.
Yeah.
Except for I guess there's nobody from Black Gulch in there, but from the two kind of kingdoms that he has there. And we always, we kind of theorize that the Bastille was his anyway. That spoke was part of his country.
Yeah. Or that he had like appropriated it.
Yeah.
For his own purpose, if it existed there before. I think, what was it, like Lindelt used to be there, or was that Amana? Something like.
No, it wasn't Lindelt, like, was one of the areas that got its lore expanded in the patch version.
Oh yeah.
And we learned more about Lindelt. It is far away and full of shitheads. So
yeah. And that is pretty much it for this area. Like the Mirror Knight or the Looking Glass Knight is relatively unchanged. Aside from what is it? You can bring Benhart in here, and then there's also somebody else you can bring too.
Another new summon who I can't remember who it is. The Shrine of Amana, which is the next area, which is just tweaked.
Yes. Right?
Like, this is not that different. It's just additional enemies placed in different ways to make this a little bit tougher. And a couple of them that are Vendrick standbys.
Yeah. So like a lot of the new ones that they added, like there's a Dragon Rider down here now. Where they're putting this out there, and again, it's just the idea that this is the trail that he walked, and this is the trail that he doesn't want anybody else to walk.
Yeah, and that goes to the throne or whatever, where you can get his soul after you. Right, that's where the Dragon Rider is.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah. So it's guarding that up. They make a big change by adding the clerics. At different areas, specifically the second half of this level.
Yeah, like the one that like everybody had problems with anyway.
Yeah. Like once you get through that first area and get to that bonfire, you get to the area where Peculiar Kundular invades, and his spacing is different, so he doesn't invade until later, which prohibits you from running through the level. And the area where that used to just be full of the waterlogged hollows now is full of more sorceresses and more clerics in addition. So that's like a very hard area now.
Yeah. Yeah, and
really
like even more so than in the previous area, like the very difficult run up, they are covering each other, and like this just becomes like you get caught up in the crossfire.
Yeah. Like a board game.
Yeah, so that is pretty difficult, and it makes those like the wing blade down there tougher to get to. Like just in general, they push the throttle right up until the very end, which is still the very easy Demon of Song.
Yes,
but
there's not a big deal.
There's a summon here actually who can make this the side of it a little bit easier. Again, those summons that are being placed for the area, not necessarily the boss.
Exactly. Like, and I mentioned this in the last episode, but rather than being Felicia the Brave, who is not that useful, it is an archer, which is what you want in the Shrine of Amana.
Yeah,
and he'll TCB for you.
Yeah,
but this area is not that changed. Other than that, that we mentioned,
it still makes archers of us all.
Exactly. You get through here, and I actually couldn't get into this next area on either of my playthroughs. I didn't get the key or do the requirement to get to the shrine that gives you back your humanity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't get in there. What I can't remember what it was, what I was missing to get in there, but I couldn't get in there before we recorded.
It's you have to be human or hollow. It's one or the other.
Yeah, I must have been human because I tried to play human as much as I could during this playthrough.
Yeah,
to get invaded and to summon frequently. So I couldn't actually get in there. So if there are changes back there, I missed them.
There are just some desert sorceresses. So those pyromancers. Back there with the shrine that turns you human in the Milfinito.
Yeah. The Undead Crypt is very different.
Oh, also there are basilisks outside of the Rise of the Dead as well.
You're right. Yep.
And,
which is the area outside that temple.
Yeah. But yeah, the Undead Crypt. Holy shit.
Yeah, this is really great. I really like this area more than I did before, and I feel like there's a gameplay mechanic that they haven't done in another Souls game that they add just through like balance stuff. So like it is this is more intensely guarded. And it's right, it's just that way right from the top. Like as soon as you go into that first room with the sorceresses, that kind of like shooter room, like it looks like you walk into a cover-based shooter arena. There are the knights with the giant shields now. There, and you're going to have to deal with more of those guys. Yeah,
which is strange because those are supposed to be like named NPCs. Like they're not part of an order. Like that gear is named after specific people from the Empire, right? So it's the Imperial set.
Yeah, I thought it was two guys who inspired it, or something like that, because there's two of them, but they only mentioned one guy. I want to say, and each shield has a different name, but you always ran into at least two of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the story was with those guys lore-wise, but they're punished for their shitty idea by having to guard this crypt was the idea. But there's a bunch of like weird little details. So like in the very first room, the hollow that has the torch is not aggressive. So you can actually have him be your torch bearer
if you want to get him into the rest of the crypt, you have to aggro Agdane and his Grave Wardens. Whoops.
Which has always been a thing, but it's the light thing has more of a threat now because if you go down to that little lantern that you could light, and previously it just made this really awe-inspiring thing with those giant statues light up. Now that spawns a bunch of black phantoms.
Yes.
Yeah.
So previously you could buy the insulin set from Agdane, right? That is the set of armor from these clerics who, sought to defile the crypt in order to, kind of learn more about the undead curse or what have you. And they were turned into kind of the thralls to guard this. But those characters, that sect, never showed up here.
They were just a reference.
Yes.
Equipment.
So now these are phantoms who invade, and it's not just that their bodies are here to like guard you, and like with their hollow purpose, right? No, this is their eternal spirit being enslaved across worlds to guard this place against the light that they sought to bring to it. And that even manifests in they use lightning magic and hex.
Yeah, and I like how it sounded like you said the insulin set as opposed to the insulin set, like me and Nick Lauber, part of the insulin set. But I love that it ends up being, unless you're farming for that equipment, there's less reason to turn on that light, which before I kind of liked it as just this like very pretty thing you could do before. But I mean, it does make things easier to see and easier to get around. But now it's like there's a consequence to it. It's similar to the other torches.
It's like,
and someone will run to soon.
And you get a preview of that too. Instead of having a cyanide on that little bridge leading over to the undead ditch, there's now a lantern or a sconce or whatever with a messenger or a developer warning saying like, hey, don't do it or don't you dare or what have you. So it's kind of cool that they give you like a make this area harder lever, kind of like shows up in Aldea, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the areas that are the kind of low-lying areas full of tombstones are very different now, because there are always those kind of mausoleums or bigger tombstones that would summon the Lydia pyromancers whenever there was a bell.
Yeah, but you could destroy those.
You can destroy those, and you still can, but they're positioned in weird ways now close to bells. So like making your way through here, you have to be really aware of your arc of your weapon. Yeah. Which I thought was really cool. Like I need to destroy this, but I need to make sure I'm not going to hit this bell. I need to make sure no skeletons or zombies around here get to a bell while I'm here. And the bell really makes a lot of sense because before it was an alarm, but now there are alarms everywhere. Like the idea of these hollows where it's like, hey, if any shit goes down, ring this bell and you get backup.
Yeah.
And they're just, furiously pushing the button under the register. Like, oh shit, the chosen undead's here. So I really like this. Like I really like the way this articulates now.
Yeah.
It's you can't make it through without destroying tombstones. Like it is just tombstones upon tombstones on the ground.
Yeah, like it is butt to gut tombstones.
Yeah, I dig it. Like, and I liked having to I ended up switching my weapon at a certain point because my big weapon would have hit a bell in order to destroy the Lydia pyromancer tombstones.
And on the other side of that, I had a lance, and you would think that would have been ideal, but like that is so hard to make attack what you want it to attack if you can't lock on.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So I like this a lot though, and it's something that like the be careful where you attack isn't a Souls thing,
right?
That I've seen before. Like you have to attack certain things, but you need to actually be very aware of your weapon set and your move set to get through this. And it was like, oh, they used like just existing assets and this remix to actually introduce a new level concept for the game, which is really cool. Like I was pretty impressed with that.
Yeah. The changes even go into the main hallway too, because like they are designing this again to trip up people who know the tricks of the game, right? So you have the one bell hollow underneath the stairs. You go and get them, and then you think, la da da, I'm gonna run down. Nope, there's another bell. There are actually three, and they're going to stagger. So you have to wait for all three of them to come.
Yeah,
that is such a good like troll. Like I can't think of another word for it.
And it's so much harder to just run past these. Than it used to be. Like the fact that there's like there are more enemies here. There is an actual dragon rider guarding Velstadt and Vendrick now.
So it's no longer. I thought it was easier to run past all this stuff too, because everything will run toward you and you can kind of like bait them out and then kind of get in behind them. Whereas before you had those Scion Knights that were in kind of the guard pose. It would never leave. So you had to deal with everybody in order to deal with those guys and actually get past them, because otherwise they were just going to make a wall with their shields.
So pretty cool. I dig it.
Yeah.
Velstadt, bosses are not that different.
Velstadt and King Vendrick are no different, except for Vendrick. If you have the Ashen Mist Heart from later, you can go in and get his dialogue and kind of get the quest lines that lead into the DLC.
Yeah, and there's an additional summon here as well, other than Agdane. I can't remember who it is though.
Yeah.
So if you want to, you can grab somebody else. On to Aldea's Keep, which is also very different. And the thing I like about Aldea's Keep is it is like a really like almost combat optional area now.
Yeah.
Other than a little bit at the end and the beginning, which is really cool. Like it is, like I always love this area because it's a mad scientist lab, and they've underlined that like crazy.
Yeah. And with the changes to the rest of the world, there's a little bit more weight and import, and it's like Aldea's relationship to Drain Lake has kind of reversed, right?
Yeah.
So previously, like Aldea did it, right? There would just be weird stuff that had something to do with Aldea out there in the world. Those things are gone, and in fact, the increased variety of stuff that you find here in the exhibits kind of paints a more accurate picture about what he would have been doing, which is he's gathering this stuff and kind of studying it. Not that all this stuff had escaped from him.
Yeah, he's he's collecting subjects for research, which is what we knew he was doing, but now it looks like that.
Yeah.
Which is super cool. Like I really dig that. Like, you make your way up. It's we talked about this last time, I believe, with the kobolds and the ogre, to get the red eye ring. You make your way in there and you make your way past the kobolds in the yard. And now there are really no enemies other than a couple of the dragon acolytes that come out of paintings that you have to run into.
Yeah. The mirror D&D party is still there, but there's a summon that you can use to help deal with them.
Yeah, and again the mirror D&D party if you want. Like you have to go to those mirrors and opt in. There are torches now everywhere. And if you light all of them, they each summon a forlorn. And that's how you get the Aldia key to get into his like secret workshop.
Yep. And so the dragon doesn't animate upon entry now.
Yeah.
It actually happens once you have kind of banished all of these forlorns. I don't think that there's any story reason for the forlorns to be linked to this dragon.
No, it's the dog mirror thing in Resident Evil Remake.
Yeah.
It's just this thing you're expecting, a jump scare, you're expecting it, and it's getting tension from not having it.
Yeah.
But I love my biggest, like one of my favorite changes in the remake at all, is the idea of this half human, half dragon creature, as opposed to there just being a bunch of them. There's just one now.
Yep.
Like it's in a cave, and that's the prototype for the Emerald Herald. That's him trying to mix dragon and human DNA to make somebody immune to the curse. There's just one, and it's there, and it makes sense. Like he has it in a cage because he's been experimenting on it.
Yep.
That's so good. Like that's such a better use of this thing. You don't have to fight this thing. It doesn't like inside. Once you do all of the forlorns and go into a secret workshop, there's just a lever that like you should only pull if you want to fight things, because it just opens all of his cages.
Was that there in the original version of the game?
I don't know, because in the original version I aggroed the monsters to get them out. Yeah. I never got there and not had them out. I always fought all the monsters.
Yeah.
And I just did it by shooting them with an arrow and they bust out of the cage. Now they don't bust out.
Yeah. So and there's more variety too. You have mimics that are up there, and also mimics in the workshop. There's a bell gargoyle.
Yeah, that's what he's got in the cage instead of a giant
like acid beetle. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of a scarab.
It's like you're made of stone, dog. Just burst out of there. Come on.
It's a serious cage. But like you get this idea of like just all, and man, if I was a mad scientist, like I would experiment with mimics. Like what would you want other than a mimic? Like that's fascinating ecology.
Yep.
I'm gonna look up the Dragon magazine, like the ecology of the mimic entry, like right after we're done recording this.
So good.
It's gonna be good. I love mimics. That's one of my most depressing like omissions from Bloodborne.
Oh yeah.
Like there's no equivalent to that. Because I love a mimic.
You would think that there would be more trapped chests in Bloodborne actually because of the steampunk thing, right?
Yeah. No, that's just that they don't care.
Not the case.
That's not. Well, it's because there's not as much treasure, so you can't have as many mimics when you only have 5 weapons in the whole game.
True.
It makes less sense to have mimics.
Yeah.
But I missed them.
The reason I asked about that lever is I was like, ooh, a lever. I don't remember this being here, and I pulled it, and then immediately, again, like with the Undead Crypt, there is just a make this level harder button.
Yeah. And it's the reason why you do it. I had the same experience. I couldn't remember it either, but I wasn't totally sure it wasn't there. Like I said, I just didn't have the monsters up there. The reason why you'd want to make it harder is because you want to get the ogre to come down and bust open that wall, which you can still do in order to get the malformed skull or what have you from there. But that's how you do it. So,
right.
Yeah. So that's really it for this area, but it feels very different.
Yeah.
Like being in the workshop, being in the secret area is so hard to get into now. And it's got a lot more treasure in there, all of which are mimics and stuff. Like it just feels like more of a secret area.
This was the place where I died to a mimic because I stupidly attacked it from the front and got cocky.
Yeah. This is where I opened up a mimic and got eaten by it. So
additionally, so you tried a new build for this, right? You were power stancing. I ended up re-rolling my character with a soul vessel to make him a quality build.
Okay.
Yep. And that's pretty cool. I didn't expect that to be as fun as it was. And I updated, I dual wielded and power stanced two longswords as well.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. And so I had a lance and then these 2 longswords, and like I was doing crazy damage. Like that is such a weird path to take through the game.
Power stancing is so fun. like in that game. I love power stance. Like I wanted to get be able to power stance 2 lances
Mm-hmm.
and see what that was like, but the lance I was using had really insane requirements.
Yeah, like it's
So
it's the dex that gets you.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. Yeah. So you get through here, you fight the Guardian Dragon. Again, none of these bosses have changed,
Right.
so it seems kind of anticlimactic. The Dragon's area now has the shortcut open from the beginning. Like, so if you want to not disturb these things, which like if Aldia could potentially be going back and forth between the Dragon Shrine and the Aerie, to confer with the Guardian or the Ancient Dragon or what have you, whatever reason he might have had to transport between these things, it makes sense that he's not going to want to roll through a bunch of dragon eggs every time he does it.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah. So yeah, like the shortcut is open almost by necessity because there's that statue there.
Yeah. So if you want to go into here and just get all the treasure and upgrade materials, you have to actually, it's an optional area now, more or less. You have to use a fragrant branch.
Yeah. But also they open up the ability to walk through it backwards, which was how I did it.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Which that's a mirror course in Mario Kart. Like it makes you think about the space in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, they're doing a lot with a little, as far as changing this. There's also just a few new enemies here, a couple of different configurations of those exploding guys. And then those priests that shoot the homing missiles, not the ones from Shrine of Amana, but the one from Dragon Shrine.
Yeah.
Those are around now.
I think that's the only place they show up now, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I like the idea
I
of
didn't
these
get
priests like actively guarding the hatchlings.
Yeah, me too. And then I didn't get this NPC invasion you have in the notes.
Yeah, Fencer Sharon. It's kind of like in the last or the first third. Man, the fact that this is now time is a flat circle. No, it's roughly towards the end if you're running through it backwards. And she makes use of the bridges in a very frustrating way.
That makes sense. Yeah, I don't know what I did to avoid her, but I just never hit trigger. The Dragon Shrine's also very different.
Yeah, this has a concept now.
Yeah, and it is this idea of it's similar to Hades, right? So like you show up and there are all these dragon knights, and there it is a place of honor, but they want you to fight their giants here.
Yeah.
And if you fight them, great. But if you try to run past anybody who's aggroed, you'll aggro the entire compound.
Yep. So you have to make sure that you take it real slow and you don't try and speed run this. So like this is I think the first time like any of the games has discouraged you from playing Football Souls, in as direct and as on the nose of a way.
Yeah, it's very hard to rush through. And both times I've gone through this, I have aggroed the enemies, but only partway through. They bow to you if you don't aggro them, which I really like.
Yeah.
But the other thing that will aggro them is summoning for it. And there's a summon who's there, who I summoned to help me fight the giant with the who's still bullshit. Like the giant with the hammer who has unlimited stamina. That guy sucks. So I summoned to help fight him because I wanted to see all the summons, and that aggroes everybody.
Yeah.
So when you get to the stairs at the end, it's literally here's a dozen guys running down the stairs right at me, and it became this whatever that the bridge from 300, right? Like all you can do to fight these guys is they have to squeeze through this door, and it like worked. Like it was a really cool like I held off, 12 of these Dragon Knights. Because they couldn't all come at me at once. Like I just used that against them. And that was another thing that like, I don't know if that's intended because you can get past them without them aggroing. But I felt really cool about that too. I was like, I haven't done this in a Souls game. Like I have to use the geography, like use a choke point in a way that's very literal and very vital. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. If you don't end up aggroing the people who are on that stairway, the gold ones on the side, they bow to you as you walk through, which is like just straight up something out of a Black Velvet painting of a fantasy scene, right? But they will aggro if you skip the one the one knight who is aggressive. So they're just you remember in the original there were those ones who were just kind of like gray. Up toward the top, and they just have like a different moveset. But yeah, like that's the one who fights you. If you run past him, all of them will aggro. Whereas if you just kill this one guy, the challenger, then you can just proceed to the dragon and have your conversation with him.
Yeah, they just want you to to fight on their terms and have honor.
Yeah, so like honor is the key word for this. Like this is a place of honor. They're going to welcome your presence, and in fact, they're going to roll out the welcome mat in a way you haven't seen before, but only if you kind of match their terms.
Yeah, which is super cool.
Yeah,
like I like that a lot. So you get the Ashen Mist. The giant memories are a little bit different too, mostly just in the fact that there are some more. So Vendrick's forces have kind of a wider variety. And there are more of them fighting the giants. Like in the past, whenever you just if you just sat down and watched people fight, the giants would almost exclusively win. Like one of those dual wielding club giants would come and just start stomping Vendrick's forces. And now it's more of an even fight because he has some turtle knights on his side as well.
Yeah. And this feels like a consequence of them being able to put more enemies on the screen.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it definitely makes it feel like a battle again.
Yeah.
Whereas before it felt like the drags, it felt like the aftermath.
And then you just kind of go through the ending, which is unchanged. If we hadn't already talked about the Aldea fight, this would be a good place to talk about that. It is. I went through and took a bunch of people with me because again, I just wanted to see all the NPC summons. And you can summon like a full host with you for these final fights. But I will say, as a pro tip to anybody out there, Aldea is harder the more people you bring with you. It's like Fume Knight. Like the HP buff that he gets makes him harder than he would be if you just kind of learned the patterns and figured him out.
And like his pattern doesn't reward having a whole bunch of people there because of his teleportation. Everybody will be rushing toward him and kind of taking their hits as you go, as opposed to
getting in his way and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's nice to have him have other targets, but you can't attack him when that's happening anyway because he has the fire up around him. It's a boss fight that's about limiting your access.
Yeah, and he's already just crazy HP sponge. In the original version anyway.
Yeah. And then we mentioned in the last episode, the DLCs are actually unchanged, but the ways you get there are changed. We talked about where you get the keys, but we go over them again just in case anybody's wondering.
Yep. So to get to the Crown of the Sunken King, you have to get into kind of the secret area, not where Havel's set is, but kind of up in the pit, to get the Dragon's Fang, which will unlock that particular door.
And that door, you need to get the ancient key first, which is down where the giants are, under the Black Gulch. The Ivory King, the path there is through the Shrine of Winter is in Drangleic, and you'll run into it. It's the only key for these that's right on the critical path.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because the Ivory King is arguably the hardest of the DLCs, but they give you have to unlock that DLC.
Yeah.
Or you'll definitely see it.
And then the Iron Key is I believe that it's in the like the statue at the beginning of at the beginning of the Iron Keep where you have to
No, that's the one that lets you into the basement of the giant, which is down there is where the salamanders are, is where the key is to the DLC.
Yeah.
Which I still think are the hardest enemies in the game.
So what's really cool about this, and just the way that they get this, it would be a little, it would be a little like trying to learn not the pendant trick, but going and killing that golden golem, getting to the Artorias of the Abyss DLC feels like a Simon's Quest trick. It would be frustrating if you bought the DLC, or a little frustrating if you bought the DLC and you had to go look for these keys. As it stood in the original DX9 version, you just got the keys when you fired this up. As it stands, for most of these, you're going to go through the areas that contain these portals as the terminus, your Black Gulch and your Iron Keep and your Shrine of Winter, and then proceed past them and do this extra stuff. You're going to see these and then kind of go do the extra to get the key to that lets you open them up, as opposed to it being the other way around where you just grab these and have to know that you have to see it. So if you do not know what these portals do, it serves as this awesome mystery, and it actually underlines that this is going to be late to end game content, because most of those places are incredibly difficult to get to, the Shrine of Winter one aside.
Yeah, I'm really looking. I really really like that. Because it adds control to this thing that didn't have control, and it adds the keys are not placed haphazardly.
Yeah,
like the placements all make sense, as being where these kings may be made, egress into the actual world of main Drangleic. And that's really it. The other thing is, obviously, I talked about in the last one, but the Ivory King boss fight brings 7 people, and that's incredible. And I imagine it also feels really good to bring 4 people with you to fight Sin. and
Yes.
stuff. I bet you that's cool.
Alana is a lot easier now with more people.
Yeah, I believe that. And that's it. Like, I think that's it. We ended up misjudging the episode split. Like, it made sense to go through Drang Lake, but this episode is way shorter.
Yeah.
Than the other one.
Whoops. Sorry, guys.
No, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a big deal. Yeah. So yeah, what are your wrap up thoughts? Cool.
Yeah. So I expected to come to the Scholar remake and kind of really kind of dive in and get a new sense for what the macro story of Dark Souls 2 was. And that is the case. Like, if you are just seeing the new DLC, you're actually seeing Aldia and the Scholar and getting that dialogue that does cast things in a different light. It doesn't draw everything together, like you would want it to, right? The pieces are still really far apart, and there's a little bit more mortar in between them to kind of like make it. But this is still a collection of short stories, right? And I, the more I think about it, that is a strength of the game. And it's not as kind of satisfying as the crazy, delicate, and intricate tapestry of Dark Souls 1. But, things can be strong in a different way. And what the Scholar remake did, at least in terms of lore, with the placement and the item stuff, is make each of those short stories make more sense on their own and reduced the number of confusing connections that just added noise over top of the signal.
That's absolutely what it is. It's like it's like not as much of an additive remake. It is a pasting over a week. Yeah, it's corrective in a way that, like, I sound like a broken record. I keep saying that is that, like, people complain about that. It's a strength of the medium, though. Like, the fact that we can actually fix things. It doesn't suck that, like, oh man, day one patch. Like, no, that's great. Like, can you imagine if you saw a movie and the movie sucked? And somebody was like, oh shit, like, I want to listen to the people who are fans of this and think it's bad, and actually listen to feedback and change it.
Yeah.
And not without not just like bowing to, it's no censorship. Like, they're not bowing to the, the customer is always right, but they're like, they're people too, and they don't know exactly how something's going to play out until it's out in as many hands to kind of test it.
And knowing what we know now from the translation of the Design Works book, knowing just how crazy troubled the development process was, like, they got to make the DLCs on their own terms. That is why they are as strong as they were. They didn't have to stop halfway through and then just kind of repurpose and try and like gather together as many assets as they could. And so the fact that after they finished up that DLC and thought, yeah, we actually learned a lot of lessons from doing that. What can we do to actually bring a little bit of this design and ethos back to the main portion of the game? Like, that is admirable, I think.
And also it's a really amazing it's a really amazing feat of economy, because, like, as we mentioned, like, they couldn't get voice actors back in to record. They were very limited in what they could do as far as new assets. Just how can we reshuffle things to make them work? And that really impresses me too.
So they couldn't make Dark Souls 2 Dark Souls 1 with an HD remake,
No.
Like, that's out of scope, and that's a little bit crazy. And like, going into it, maybe I know that I personally had like maybe higher hopes, but I in the intervening time, I've learned to kind of accept it for what it is and see the strength of what's there on the page.
What's really interesting too, and this is gonna people who think that all I do is bash Bloodborne, as if I don't really love it, because I do. But Bloodborne, I think you could make the argument that Bloodborne went so far in the other direction, and that, like, Bloodborne's story is almost as different from Dark Souls' story as Dark Souls 2 story is as different from Dark Souls story. Like, Bloodborne is the most direct of the games in the series. The story in Bloodborne is not nearly as up for interpretation, as these things are. So whereas it felt like a swing back and too far in the other direction, not in a way I dislike, like, I actually like that, but it is, you never hear that. Like, nobody ever says, like, oh, like, I wish Bloodborne had more unanswered questions, because the fact of the matter is it doesn't have very many unanswered questions, whereas Dark Souls 1 still had those airs of mystery to them, and Bloodborne does have some unanswered questions, but not nearly as many as Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like they're on a spectrum, and I think that if you can accept Dark Souls 2 as a series of short stories, and if you actually like the play, which I do, That's what makes it stand up.
Yeah.
You know, like
and Scholar
those
just makes the
aspects.
play better.
Yeah, Scholar makes the play better and makes the short stories read better. It's like cutting the ads out of a magazine. You know, like it just it makes it read better and makes it work better. I'm really glad like we spent as much time with it as we did, and it was a joy to go back to. Like it felt liberating to do it. Like to have the freedom and stuff. Like all the things that I missed from Bloodborne were there, which was really nice. And that being said, like I'm really looking forward to getting back to playing Bloodborne as well.
Too.
We're covering like my favorite area in the game. Like I love Bloodborne. I just don't like it is just my resistance to internet hyperbole. Like it's not my favorite thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, love it. It's real good. And I'm envious of people who only get to play that version.
Me too.
Like if you just get to our friend or my friend Will Hughes is like the hypothetical we were talking about. What is it like if you've only played Scholar? He's only played Scholar. And it was fun to talk to him about it.
Nice.
And see what the experience was like. And it stood up for him as well. It's his favorite entry in the series out of the ones he's played.
Huh.
So
man, that divide, people who are coming to Scholar first. So for that 4-month period where I hadn't played Scholar, I could not Dark Souls Sherpa somebody through Dark Souls 2.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be useless. Like you would just be like, oh yeah, no, Hades is no problem. And like,
well, actually,
yeah, it's actually very hard. Like, yeah, you'd be useless. And that's like, that cuts to the core of like my feelings of confidence about, about this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like I do have that, like you do have that little bit of pride of like, oh, I know this game really well. I can help you with this.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
Cool.
Yep, I'd encourage people to play it. Like, if you feel like it's too soon, if you're like, oh man, I just played it, like, give yourself as much time as you need. But yeah. I think that if you have any affection for Dark Souls 2, like, maybe playing Scholar is going to make you feel about Dark Souls 2 as a whole as you felt about Dark Souls 2 in the first leg of it.
Yeah.
Before you knew the size and shape of it and kind of saw where it came up short.
And take that opportunity to try a really different build.
Oh yeah,
like do some fun stuff you can't do in Bloodborne. You know, in the thing, like fuck around with some pyromancies. Shit, treat yourself. What are we doing next time, Cole?
Well, next time we have an appendix with some responses about Scholar of the First Sin. There isn't going to be any Bloodborne content in that because that's not how we roll. But the next area of Bloodborne that we're going to get to is Forsaken Castle Canehurst.
I'm very excited because I love that area.
Me too. Who are we being joined by, Gary?
Well, I don't know. I have somebody I just not confirmed.
Okay.
I don't want to say it. Yeah, but I'll announce it on Slack and on Facebook once it's confirmed.
Cool.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
What's this Slack thing you keep talking about?
Well, it's a chat room. If you go to our patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and give us $2 a month, which is a pittance. If you can afford, and I'm not making fun of anybody who can afford that. I'm just saying it's a very modest amount of money by most standards. If you give us $2 a month, you get access to the Slack channel, which is a chat room where people post awesome shit and talk about cool stuff related to the shows and related to games. Weirdly enough, it's a place for anime chat, and so you can go there and we're there, and the other hosts are there. Jala is like super active.
Dennis is active.
There. Yeah. So you can talk to everybody there and just join, be more engaged in the community, and at the same time supporting us. Yeah. And helping us do cool shit.
Definitely. It is a great place. We want it to be like a safe place, where people can kind of be cool. So keep that in mind that that is a priority for us. If you ever feel like, hey, that wasn't too great, and you don't feel like kind of dealing with that, let us know and we'll figure out a way to do it. But that safety is first and foremost in our mind.
And luckily it hasn't come up yet.
Exactly.
So we're not so naive to think it will never come up, but luckily right now it is a small enough community and a good enough community to not have that be a problem.
Right.
If you like the show, other than supporting us on Patreon, you can also rate and review the show on iTunes. We had a very nice review recently on there. One for the show and then one for Watch Out for Fireballs, which the Watch Out for Fireballs one, the guy who was a coal miner and like works 13-hour shifts in a coal mine. And I was just like, oh, that's I like that we can make that, because that sounds hard and miserable to me. Yeah. I'm not throwing stones. It just sounds like, boy, that sounds like I'm not cut out for that kind of job.
It sounds like very difficult demanding work that somebody has to do.
Yeah, very difficult. So if we can make that better, that's great. Yeah. But yeah, you can head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. That helps us out a lot. Join us on Facebook, which we mentioned. And then I mentioned during that last episode, I'm running a Kickstarter for a Dark Souls related book. It is called Souls of Darkness. It is a parody Worlds of Power book based as if Dark Souls was a Nintendo game. And I'm trying to really, all the stretch goals that are coming up and ephemera and everything really are leaning into that second half. So if you wish that there was 90s style marketing as applied to Dark Souls, I got you covered. Like me and Nick Daniel from Latchkey Kingdom are working to make that a thing.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely. That is, you can find a quick link to that at Duckfeed.tv/Souls of Darkness. And I really encourage you to help make that a reality because I want my copy of it, damn it.
It'll look good on yourself. On yourself.
And on myself. I'm going to make it into a shirt, Gary.
Make armor. If you collect 10 of them, you can craft them into an armor. And I think that's probably about it.
Just about. Thank you so much for kind of going back in time with us to talk about Dark Souls 2. This might be the last time we address Dark Souls 2 directly, unless there's something crazy that happens. Never say never. But it has been fun talking about this game with you, and let us keep looking forward to the future.
Umbasa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon